I've now ranked the luau's on Oahu, that's episode 95, plus Maui and Kauai, and enough of you asked when Big Island was coming that I can't put it off anymore. So here it is. But I need to tell you up front, this episode is going to look a little different from the other three. I've only been to 3 Big Island luau's, the Fairmont Orchid, the Royal Kona Resort, and Island Breeze. That's a smaller sample than what I gave you for Oahu or Maui, and there's a reason for that. Big Island isn't really known for its luau scene the way the other islands are. It has maybe half a dozen options total, spread across 2 very different coasts, versus a dozen plus on Oahu or Maui. It's not a knock on the island. Big Island gives you lava fields and snow-capped mountains and the Merrie Monarch Festival, which is the most prestigious hula competition on Earth. It just doesn't hand you the same buffet of luau choices. I get this question a lot from clients who are island hopping and trying to decide which stop gets the luau night. And my honest answer is almost always pick a different island. Not because Big Island's options are bad. You're about to hear why they're not. But because Oahu and Maui just give you so many more ways to spend that evening, and some of those experiences are really special. If you want more on how to think through island hopping in general, I've got episodes on choosing the right island and on whether one island or 2 makes more sense for your trip. Both are worth a listen if you're still deciding your route. But if Big Island is where you're headed regardless, or it's your only island on this trip, you've still got good options, and I'm going to walk you through all of them today, starting with the 3 I can rank from firsthand experience. Before we get into it, a couple of things. If you've already got a Big Island itinerary built and just want someone to check your work, I do $50 itinerary reviews. Send me what you've got, and I'll send back notes within 2 business days. If you haven't decided whether a luau is worth the money at all, go listen to episode 6 first. That's my full breakdown on whether luau's are worth it, and come back here once you've made up your mind. And if you're still working out the rest of your Big Island trip, planning guides and free email courses on the island are all linked over at hawaiitravelwithkids.com under Hawaii Resources. My top pick on Big Island is the Hawaii Loa Luau at the Fairmont Orchid on the Kohala coast. It runs Saturday evenings, and as of right now, standard seating runs a little over $215 a person, with a VIP package that gets you front row seats, an appetizer platter, and a complimentary photo for around $250. Kids run less on both tiers, and little ones 5 and under get their own seat and plate at no charge. We went as a family. Well, it was just my oldest son and me on that trip. He was about 10 at the time, and I splurged on the VIP seats. I figured if I was already paying for a luau, I might as well pay a little bit more for a better view. Check-in starts in the late afternoon, the buffet opens a little bit later, and the show follows after that. So you're looking at about 3 hours total once you factor in everything. If you're driving yourself, there's valet or self-parking with validation. The setting alone makes the case for this place. It's on the Kohala coast, and the resort treats the food like it matters. The poke station is a thing I keep coming back to. They had something like 6 different varieties, all of it fresh, and I'm extremely picky about poke after eating it for 20 years. I kept going back for more. The Kalua pig was perfectly done. The grilled fish tasted like something you'd order at a real restaurant. And even the side dishes felt like someone actually thought about them instead of just filling a buffet table. I had a client a while back who was staying at the Fairmont Orchid and asked what I'd recommend for a Big Island luau. When she came back and told me she'd booked this one, I got legitimately excited for her. It's such an upscale special night, and the food alone puts it at a level above most resort luau's. She said it ended up being one of the highlights of the whole trip, and every time a client picks this one, I already know they're going to love it. But here's what actually sold me on the luau, and it goes back further than that one night. When I was 10, I was staying with my grandmother on Kauai, and we watched the Merrie Monarch Festival together on her television. This was the first time I ever saw hula kahiko, the ancient style, and I was completely mesmerized. That moment is the reason I danced hula for the next 20 years. So when I sit at a luau now, I'm not just watching pretty costumes. I'm watching footwork and hand positions and whether the storytelling holds up. At the Fairmont Orchid, it held up. The hula wasn't the simplified version you see at a lot of resort shows. The dancers clearly trained seriously, and it shows in every movement. If you're staying anywhere near Waikoloa or the Kohala coast and you want one luau that's worth the splurge, this is the one I'd point you to first. Second is Voyagers of the Pacific at the Royal Kona Resort, right on Ali'i Drive in downtown Kona. It runs several nights a week, and tickets land somewhere in the $165 to $182 range per adult, with an early bird discount for the first 100 guests each night. That's a meaningful gap below the Fairmont Orchid, and for a lot of families, it's the difference between fitting a luau into the budget or skipping it. We stayed at the Royal Kona Resort specifically because they have their own luau on site, and I wanted to test something. I had a 5-year-old with me, and I was curious what it would feel like to walk back up to our room afterwards instead of carrying a sleepy kid out to a parking lot and driving somewhere in the dark. It made a real difference. No car seat, no drive, just an elevator ride back to bed. Check-in is easy to find if you're staying on property, tucked between the pool and the lagoon tower. You really can't miss it. If you're driving in from elsewhere, parking runs a reduced rate at about $5 for the night. Kids 6 to 11 run somewhere around $65 to $70, and 5 and under get in free. The show covers a lot of ground. It opens with Tahitian dancing, and one of the MCs explained why almost every luau starts this way, since Tahitians were the first Polynesians to voyage to Hawaii. From there, it moves to hula kahiko, the ancient style, dance to a chant about the fire goddess Pele sending her sister Hi'iaka to Kauai to retrieve her lover. It builds to a Samoan fire knife finale, where the performer had 2 knives going at once, which got the loudest reaction of the night. There's also a fashion show segment I wasn't expecting, showcasing traditional garments, which was a fun surprise I hadn't seen at other luau's. Afterward, the cast lines up near the stage for photos, and they split the line by grouping performers together so it actually moves. The stage sits right on Kailua Bay, and you can still catch that evening light bouncing off the water as the sun goes down. If you want a solid luau without spending $200+ a person, and especially if you're staying anywhere in downtown Kona, this is what I recommend to most families. Okay, so now the one I have to warn you about. Island Breeze, held at the King Kamehameha Hotel property in Kona, was the worst luau experience I've ever had on any island. The night we went, it was raining, so they moved everything indoors. That part I totally understand. Weather happens, and I don't fault the venue for adjusting. What I do fault them for is what came after. They had us standing in the hallway in line for a full hour before we could even get inside. My son was starving the entire time, and we had no idea if we were even allowed to step out of line to go find him food. Once we finally got seated, there was another long wait before we could even reach the buffet, and there was no entertainment to fill the time, just standing around hungry, confused about what was happening next. The food itself was disappointing when we finally got to it. By the time we finished eating, the strangers seated at our table had already left because they assumed that was the end of the evening. We sat there waiting for a show that kept not starting. When it finally did, only a handful of performers showed up, and it was clear the whole thing was falling apart behind the scenes. We ended up leaving partway through because it had turned into something closer to a joke than a luau. I posted an Instagram story that night showing the empty chairs and how dismal the whole scene had gotten. The next morning, someone connected to the production called me directly and asked me to take it down. I'll leave the specifics of that conversation vague, but it was an unusual call to get, and it didn't exactly restore my confidence in how that night had been run. I want to be fair here. I know other travel bloggers who've been to Island Breeze and had a great time, and I understand why on paper this luau has fans. When the weather allows the show to stay outdoors, it's held right next to a heiau, a sacred site, and there's a replica of King Kamehameha's home nearby, which gives the whole evening a location that actually means something historically. On a normal night, the property also runs free cultural activities in the lobby, lead making, hula lessons, traditional Hawaiian games, so there's clearly effort behind the concept. And it's possible that we caught a truly bad night, weather-related staffing issues, a show that fell apart for reasons that had nothing to do with the normal evening there. But I can only tell you what happened to us, and what happened to us was bad enough that I can't recommend it, even with that caveat attached. If you want more stories like this one, nights that went sideways, and what I wish I'd known beforehand, that's basically what episode 100 is about. Those 3 are the ones I've personally sat through, but Big Island has a handful of others worth knowing about, even though I haven't attended them myself yet. Before I get into those, a quick word on how to think about picking between all of them. If you're traveling with grandparents, look for the ones with more comfortable seating setups rather than mat seating on the ground. If you've got picky eaters, don't stress too much. Every luau on this island keeps a chicken and rice option, along with the traditional dishes. If your schedule's tight because you're only in one area for a night or two, pay attention to which nights each show actually runs, since some of these only happen once a week. Up at the Mauna Lani, Hale Ho'oloha is the newest luau on the island, set at the historic Kalahuipua'a fish ponds where Hawaiian royalty once gathered. Those fish ponds aren't just scenery, they're ancient aquaculture sites where ali'i actually raised fish, and the show leads into that history instead of treating it as a backdrop. It runs on Fridays with some seasonal Monday dates added, and tickets run right around $230 a person, with an optional ali'i upgrade for priority seating and wine service. It's priced closer to the Fairmont Orchid than the budget end. If Hawaiian history matters more to you than almost anything else about the evening, this is the one to prioritize. Over at the Waikoloa Beach Marriott, the Sunset Luau runs Monday and Wednesday, and this is the one where you want to look at the real total before you book. The advertised rate is around $170, but there's a service charge added at checkout that isn't optional, so you're closer to $200 a person once everything's added up. That's worth knowing going in so you're not caught off guard. If you're staying anywhere in Waikoloa and just want something convenient without a long drive, it's still a practical choice. And having 2 nights a week to pick from gives you more flexibility if your schedule is tight. And down at the Outrigger Kona Resort in Keauhou Bay, Feast and Fire runs Monday and Thursday evenings and is performed by the Lim family, who trace their lineage back to Alapa'i Nui, a former ruling chief of Hawaii. That's real family history, not a marketing line, and as someone who's spent 20 years in this world, I have a lot of respect for performers telling their own ancestors' stories instead of a script someone handed them. General seating runs around $185 for adults and $90 for kids, and there's an elite private seating option near the front for around $225. The setting on Keauhou Bay is beautiful, and the artisan village they run before the show has demonstrations that feel like they're actually teaching you something, not just filling time before dinner. So, here's where that leaves you. Fairmont Orchid's Hawaii Loa Luau if you want the best food and the most polished hula on the island, and the budget allows for it. Voyagers of the Pacific at Royal Kona if you want a solid night at a friendlier price, especially if you're already staying in Kona. Skip Island Breeze, or at least go in with your expectations managed. And if none of those fit your schedule, Hale Ho'oloha, Sunset Luau, or Feast and Fire round out the list depending on where you've landed. And one more time, because I mean it, if a stacked luau lineup is what you're after and you're choosing between islands, Maui and Oahu will give you more to pick from. Big Island's real hula claim to fame is the Merrie Monarch Festival, not its luau roster. Every spring, dancers from all over the world travel to Hilo to compete, and the level of skill on that stage is nothing like what you'll see at a resort luau because it was never built for tourists in the first place. That doesn't mean skip a luau here entirely. It just means keep your expectations realistic about how many options you're choosing between and lead towards the one I actually trust rather than whichever one happens to be closest to your hotel. All the links to book any of these are live at hawaiitravelwithkids.com. And if you want the full list of my trusted resources, guidebooks, and free email courses, that's all at hawaiitravelwithkids.com under Hawaii Resources. If you want someone to actually look at your Big Island plans and tell you whether the luau you picked makes sense for your family, that's exactly what consultations and itinerary reviews are for. Both are linked at hawaiitravelwithkids.com. And if you want to connect with other families planning their own Big Island trips, come find us in the Hawaii Travel with Kids Facebook group. Thanks so much for listening. If this saved you from a bad night at a luau, send it to someone else planning a Big Island trip. Thanks so much for joining us. Until next time, aloha.